Israel woke up to a barrage of thousands of rockets fired from the Gaza Strip.
אזרחי ישראל, אנחנו במלחמה.
Hello everyone, welcome back. You're watching WION World is One. This is another edition of World DNA, the show that gets you ahead of others. I'm Shivan Chandna.
And I'm Hem Korsora, and on the show today, Israel is in the grip of anger and despair as 3 Israeli hostages were mistakenly killed by Israeli soldiers in Gaza. Officials admit to a breach of rules of engagement as the hostages, who had used food to write SOS on the white cloth, were shot. We'll bring you the latest on this on the show.
Also on the show, the Houthi threat has brought a halt. Nearly half of the shipping routes through the Red Sea have been stopped now. A development which would have substantial repercussions. We will get you all the details on this as well on the show today. All this and a lot more in the next 60 minutes right here on World DNA. Let's get you started with the headlines.
South Korea says neighbor North Korea fired at least one seemingly long-range ballistic missile early on Monday. This comes just hours after separate late-night launch of a short-range missile.
Pro-democracy activist in Hong Kong and media tycoon Jimmy Lai's trial is set to begin moments from now. He faces national security charges and is accused of colluding with foreign forces.
WHO chief denounces Israeli destruction of a North Gaza hospital. At least 8 people were killed in the siege. Says many of its health workers have been detained by the IDF as well. Israel claims Hamas is using the hospital as a command center.
At least 12 people killed in an attack on a holiday party in Mexico. Authorities say an armed group opened fire on the attendees.
India's seamers Arshdeep Singh and Avesh Khan helped skittle South Africa out for 116 before Sai Sudarshan scored an unbeaten 55 on debut as India romped to an 8-wicket victory in the first match of the 3-game series at the Wanderers.
And they were clinical in the run chase. Yeah, I think when South Africa sit back and they just have a look at some of the discussion.
Now, security is tight outside the Hong Kong court as media tycoon and pro-democracy activist Jimmy Lai faces his biggest trial today.
Well, the entire world is watching, especially the West. The 76-year-old can face life imprisonment over his charges under Beijing's national security law. Lai gained popularity as one of the most fierce critics of the Chinese Communist Party's stronghold in Hong Kong. In 1995, he founded the country's pro-democracy newspaper, Apple Daily. The newspaper was forced shut in 2021 after Lai's arrest in August 2020. Now, police authorities froze about $2.3 million worth of the firm's assets, and after multiple raids at the paper's building, now the British national has been in prison for 1,100 days.
Lai has often made headlines for his involvement in Hong Kong's umbrella movement protests in 2014. And the more recent anti-extradition bill demonstrations in 2019.
Western nations have slammed the Beijing-backed charges and the trial. United States, the European Union, and even the United Nations. They've all voiced their concerns here. However, Beijing has dismissed it as a mere interference.
The British Foreign Secretary David Cameron reiterated that Britain will continue to stand with the British national. Cameron reportedly also raised the issue with his Chinese counterpart Wang Yi.
Now, what are the charges faced by the media mogul? Let's take a look at those one by one. Jimmy Lai has been accused of conspiracy to collude with foreign forces. Additionally, he has also been charged with collusion under the national security law, and Lai is also facing sedition charges under a colonial era law which has been historically used for cracking down on dissent in the country.
The 80-day trial will be carried out, but without a jury or a lawyer of Lai's choice. Lai's son has rubbished the trial, accusing it for having a predetermined outcome.
You know, reflexively anxious, but there's actually no anxiety involved once you think about it, because it's a complete show trial. The result is already predetermined. It's a trial with 3 government-appointed judges, no jury, and the security minister recently boasted of a 100% conviction rate. So an absolute champ.
Now, the proceedings of the case are set to be highly publicized, as it will also be momentous in the future of Hong Kong's image as an international business and financial hub. Over to updates from West Asia next. Now, the Israel-Hamas war has flattened large parts of northern Gaza, of course, killed over 18,000 and driven most of the population to the southern part of the besieged territory.
Some 1.9 million Palestinians, nearly 85% of Gaza's population, have fled their homes. The Israeli army said that it had uncovered the biggest Hamas tunnel in the Gaza Strip so far. The army said that the underground passage had formed part of a wider branching network that stretched for more than 4 kilometers and came within 1,300 feet of the Erez border crossing.
עד כה חשפנו יותר מ4 קילומטרים של תוואי המנהרה. זהו פרויקט דגל של החמאס. הוא מגיע לעומק של 50 מטר מתחת לפני האדמה. בתוך המנהרות מצאנו אמצעי לחימה רבים. זו לא מנהרה רגילה, זו עיר. עיר טרור מתחת לאדמה, שחמאס חפר ובנה במקום להשקיע כסף בתושבי עזה.
Now, the Syrian Defense Ministry said that Israeli airstrikes against targets near Damascus wounded 2 Syrian soldiers on Sunday. A UK-based war monitor said Israeli aircraft struck Syrian regime anti-aircraft defenses and positions of Hezbollah near Saida Zainab district, south of the capital.
An Israeli hostage mistakenly killed by soldiers in the Gaza Strip was buried on Sunday. 26-year-old Alan Shamrez was one of the 3 Israeli hostages shot dead by soldiers during an operation, even as they carried a white flag and cried for help in Hebrew.
The Israeli army also released images showing banners hung by the 3 hostages mistakenly killed by Israeli troops with the writing "Help 3 hostages" and SOS.
וגם הפעם ברחת כנגד כל הסיכויים ועשית כל מה שצריך כדי לחזור הביתה. מסכן שלי, מה עבר עליך באותם רגעים שכבר ראית את האור? הוא הפך לחושך. מי שהפקיר אותך גם רצח אותך אחרי שעשית.
Palestinian Health Ministry stated Israeli forces killed 5 Palestinians on Sunday morning at a refugee camp in the West Bank. The Israeli military said airstrikes targeted militants who had endangered soldiers, according to the Palestinian ministry.
More than 290 Palestinians have been killed by Israeli forces or settlers in the West Bank. Paris condemned an Israeli bombardment in Gaza, which caused the death of one of its foreign ministry officials who had taken refuge in the Rafah home of a colleague. Now, the ministry demanded Israeli authorities shed light on the circumstances of this bombardment as soon as possible. And it did not give the name or nationality of the official who had worked for France since 2002.
Pope Francis deplored the death of 2 women in a Catholic parish in Gaza, where he said defenseless civilians were targeted by shootings and bombings.
E non dimentichiamo i nostri fratelli e sorelle che soffrono per la guerra in Ucraina, in Palestina, in Israele e nelle altre zone di conflitto. L'avvicinarsi del Natale rafforza l'impegno per aprire strade di pace.
The head of the World Health Organization denounced the effective destruction of the Kamal Adwan hospital in the north of Gaza, adding that at least 8 patients had died. Tedros Ghebreyesus said a 9-year-old child was among the deceased patients.
Now the situation in Gaza, it's reached a critical point. People in the besieged strip are now reeling under hunger. The United Nations says deprivation is driving Gazans to seize the limited aid that's been arriving.
Well, this is of course in the region now, with global pressure growing about the worsening situation in Gaza. Israel is now allowing aid through Kerem Shalom border crossing, and that meets only a very small part of the need, and the situation remains dire. The UN says that the amount of aid which is reaching Gaza has been well below the amount of 500 trucks that it used to receive in the pre-war period. Israel has now committed to allowing about 200 trucks per day.
When first aid trucks entered Gaza on Sunday, panic and chaos gripped the scene. People could be seen chasing and climbing onto them, with some aid boxes even falling off the truck. Reports say about 79 aid trucks entered Gaza on Sunday. Thousands could be seen queuing up for food as volunteers from an organization called Gaza Emergency Relief distributed food to people.
People, and this is also something completely new, people are stopping aid trucks, taking the food and eating it right away. And this is how desperate and hungry they are. And I witness this firsthand.
The UN World Food Programme says half of the population in Gaza is starving. Many in northern Gaza have been cut off from supplies, while Israel's ground offensive has been hampering aid delivery in the south.
When it comes to the food security situation, we managed to do during the 7-day pause a survey, and what we found there was that half of the population are starving. The grim reality is also that 9 out of 10 people are not eating enough, are not eating every day.
All this while airstrikes have continued across Gaza. More than 18,800 have been killed and over 50,000 wounded. The UN says that around 1.8 million have been displaced, and this means that around 85% of the population is now living in cramped conditions in southern Gaza, impending death always lurking. Aid agencies fear that Gaza may soon be overwhelmed by starvation and death. Now, we've seen the ripple effect of the Israel-Hamas war beyond its borders, and now there is the threat of a larger maritime war as well. Shivan has all the details. Over to you, Shivan.
Thanks, Haim. Again, these are concerns which have been mounting ever since the war started, but now it seems that the fears are mounting even further. Now, the Israel-Hamas war has caused violence across different regions in West Asia. But now, maritime warfares have mounted. Now, this comes as Yemen's rebel group, the Houthis, are attacking cargo vessels one after another that are en route to Israel through the southern Red Sea. Now, the threat to shipping companies is further escalating tensions in the region. Today, I'll decode the heightened regional tensions playing out on a new maritime front now. You see, the Red Sea shipping route is one of the busiest in the world. That is what makes it so pivotal here. There are thousands of ships transiting through this stretch of water, and that happens every day. This map that we'll show you on the screen very shortly, this will give you an idea of the kind of maritime traffic that I am talking about. Now, this is essentially the Red Sea that you had on the map right in front. Now, the Red Sea is a vital economic artery and is likely to become more so in the coming decades. As a result of the large oil reserves throughout the region and precious metal resources, this makes the route critical for the global energy security. More than 10% of global trade passes through the Red Sea each year. Most ships sailing from Europe to Asia take this route as it is a cost-effective route, crossing two of the 10 most strategic waterways in the world, the Bab al-Mandeb at the sea's southern entrance and Egypt's Suez Canal in the north. That's right there, Suez Canal, and the other point in the south. This is essentially the route that the ships need to take. But with the latest threat coming from the Houthi rebels from Yemen, the world's largest shipping group, Mediterranean Shipping Company, MSC, has announced that it is diverting its ships away from the Red Sea. Then the French company CMA-CGM took a similar step a day after Danish shipping giant Maersk and German transport company Hapag-Lloyd suspended Red Sea journeys as well. The four companies that have now suspended operations in the area comprise 4 of the top 5 in the world, and shipping experts say that the decisions are going to be very costly, and here is why. Next up, we'll give you a map, and this is the new route which the vessels will have to take. It will not just be through the Red Sea, they will in fact have to go all the way across Africa to reach Israel. You can imagine how short this is and how long this is going to be and how much of an impact that will have. Container ships bound for Israel from the Far East or even India will now need to take a 40% longer route around Africa and the Cape of Good Hope. All of the ships will be rerouted via the Cape of Good Hope at the southern tip of Africa, increasing the shipping time of goods by 2 to 4 weeks, and of course raising costs per ship by up to $1 million. Now, the additional costs will make goods more expensive, no doubt, and it will become more expensive for importers and trickle down to higher costs for the end consumers as well. So this is going to impact everybody, even ships going from India, one of which was recently attacked as well. These ships will now need to go through the Cape of Good Hope all the way across Africa to make it past. Now, that it as ships sailing for Israel since the war erupted already have higher freight costs as they need to pay an additional war risk premium levied by marine insurers. For Israel, this is a major concern now, as air freight is not an option since 99% of goods are imported by the sea and trade with Asia has soared, and around 40% of the cargo arriving in Israel passes through the Suez Canal. So now this is going to be a major concern, and it will impact not just Israel, it will impact all shipping countries. Goods prices will be going up, and of course the end consumer will also be impacted by this. Back to you, Ian.
Thank you so much, Shivan, for that detailed report. Let's shift our focus for now. Tensions remain high in the Korean Peninsula after North Korea fired at least one ballistic missile, just hours after it fired a short-range ballistic missile on Sunday night. South Korea's military said that the launch of the ballistic missile in the early hours of Monday was immediately detected, tracked and monitored, and the information was closely shared between the United States and Japan. Japan's defense ministry also said that North Korea launched what appears to be a ballistic missile. Prime Minister Fumio Kishida said that Japan was working to analyze the launch and that the country would hold a meeting of its National Security Council. According to the South Korean Joint Chiefs of Staff, the short-range missile was launched towards the sea off North Korea's east coast and flew about 570 kilometers before falling in the ocean. Pyongyang has condemned the US-led military shows of force, including the arrival of a submarine in South Korea, as tantamount to a preview of a nuclear war.
The test comes a day after Seoul and Washington warned Pyongyang that any nuclear attack on the United States and South Korea would result in the end of the North Korean regime. The two allies held their second session of the Nuclear Consultative Group in Washington last week on Friday, where they discussed nuclear deterrence in the event of conflict with the North. A spokesperson for the North's defense ministry slammed the allies' plans to expand a key annual joint military drill next year. The drill was to include a nuclear operation drill. North Korea has warned of a preemptive and deadly counteraction.
North Korea last year declared itself an irreversible nuclear power and has repeatedly said that it will never give up its nuclear program, which the regime views as essential for its survival. And last month, Pyongyang successfully put a military spy satellite into orbit. It has since claimed its eye in the sky was already providing images of major US and South Korean military sites. Now, as the political stage sets up for the upcoming elections in March, Russian President Vladimir Putin has declared a bold vision for his nation's future.
Absolutely, his words have been resonating all across Russia. Speaking at a conference of the ruling United Russia Party, Putin asserted his commitment to making Russia sovereign and self-sufficient.
In his first campaign speech, he accused Western powers of attempting to disrupt Russia's economic and political stability. This as he seeks to extend his rule until at least 2030, which would be possible only if he wins the March polls.
Я приветствую делегатов и гостей 21-го съезда. Важна. Мы вместе преодолевали испытания крупнейшей ведущей политической партии. Такой авторитет, а значит, все второстепенное, лишнее, то, что нас разъединяет в интересах нашей единой страны, нашего великого. И благодарю вас за поддержку. Спасибо большое.
Vladimir Putin is set to pursue a fifth term in the Kremlin as an independent candidate, with no real opposition to take his place. He has also received unanimous support from various leaders of his party. This includes the Russian Prime Minister along with other top officials.
Сомнений в том, кто должен стоять во главе российского государства в этот весьма сложный период. За кем историческая правда, справедливость и поддержка большинства. В марте 2024 года наша партия сделает все, чтобы безоговорочную победу снова одержал действующий президент России Владимир Владимирович Путин.
Earlier on Saturday, a group of over 700 politicians, sports and cultural figures met in Moscow, showcasing their support for Putin. They advocated for his independent candidacy. Now, as per reports, Putin is not representing a party in the upcoming polls, even though he has its full support.
On the other hand, the 2024 vote is expected to take place amid a huge crackdown on disagreement in Russia. Putin's main political opponent, Alexei Navalny, is currently serving a 19-year prison sentence. But last week, his allies sounded an alarm, claiming that his whereabouts are now unknown. They said that they have not had any contact with Navalny in the last 10 days. The Navalny camp said that it is possible he has been moved to another prison to avoid any disruption in Putin's campaign.
Well, with that, it's time now for a short break.
Don't go anywhere. Of course, this is World DNA. We will be back after this short break. When we come back, troubles continue for Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida as a recently conducted poll shows plummeting support for Kishida's cabinet. This while the government remains embroiled in the slush fund scandal. We will get you more on the story.
Also on the other side, Apple faces an uphill battle in the Chinese market as more Chinese agencies and state-backed companies across the country have asked their staff to not bring Apple phones and other foreign devices to work. All updates on the other side. Do stay tuned. Welcome back to World DNA. Thank you so much for staying with us so far on the show. All the top updates from Hong Kong to begin with, where media tycoon and pro-democracy activist Jimmy Lai faces trial on national security charges and is accused of colluding with foreign forces. We will, of course, continue to bring you all the developments on that.
We also took a closer look at what is happening in Gaza. Of course, the Israel-Hamas war continues. After going through northern Gaza, Israel is pretty much through southern Gaza as well. Nearly 85% of the population is completely displaced. And aid trucks have now reached a total of 200 trucks per day, which is still much lesser than the actual amount of aid which is required in the region, especially when majority of the population is completely displaced, with none of the borders opening up into the neighboring nations either. We are tracking all the developments coming in from the Israel-Hamas war. For now, let's get you started with other developments from around the world.
South Korea says neighbor North Korea fired at least one seemingly long-range ballistic missile early on Monday. This comes just hours after a separate late-night launch of a short-range missile.
Pro-democracy activist and Hong Kong media tycoon Jimmy Lai's trial begins. He faces national security charges and is accused of colluding with foreign forces.
WHO chief denounces Israeli destruction of a North Gaza hospital. At least 8 people were killed in the siege. Says many of its health workers have been detained by the IDF as well. Israel claims Hamas is using hospital as a command center.
At least 12 people killed in an attack on a holiday party in Mexico. Authorities say an armed group opened fire on attendees.
Liverpool also ends the Reds' perfect home record this season.
Van Dijk is denied by Onana.
Troubles continue to mount for Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida.
Well, a recently conducted poll shows the support rate for Kishida has plummeted. It fell to a fresh low of 22.3%, and this is after the latest rejig.
It's not just the leader, the ruling Liberal Democratic Party's popularity. It's taken a massive hit as it slid down 30%, below 30% in fact, for the first time since it returned to power more than a decade ago. Last week, Kishida reshuffled his cabinet to contain a funding scandal that threatens the future of his government.
Now, the results are not just by one select survey, but multiple polls hint at a decline in Kishida and his party's popularity. A survey by Mainichi Shimbun, conducted from December 16th and 17th, found approval of his cabinet had slumped by 5 percentage points from last month to 16%. Now, the lowest since he took office in October 2021. His disapproval rate rose to 79%, the highest since the newspaper started conducting such polls more than 7 decades ago.
A separate Nikkei survey found support dropped 4 percentage points to 26%, a level often seen as the danger zone for Japanese premiers. About 67% of respondents to the Nikkei poll said Kishida is responsible for the political funding issue, while 28% disagreed.
These ratings come despite Kishida replacing all 4 ministers belonging to the faction, including the chief cabinet secretary. The probe, which is at the centre here, focuses on the funds raised by the biggest faction in the LDP that was once led by former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe.
The allegations say that the LDP's largest faction failed to declare more than $700,000 of fundraising party revenue in political funding reports. Kishida said that he would take steps to restore trust in his government amid the scandal. Earlier, he had stepped down as head of his own party faction while serving as Prime Minister. Now, for more on this, we're now being joined by our correspondent Chris Gilbert, live from Tokyo. Chris, thank you so much for joining us on World Day.
Oh, good morning.
Now, Chris, of course, first things first, these are the lowest ratings in decades, in fact. And Kishida, he's already stepped down as the party chief. What's left? How do you see things unfolding going forward from here?
Well, Kishida has stepped down as the chief of his faction of the party, but there are questions that are lingering about his continual leadership of the party going forward, especially with polling this bad. Now, we have to remember a couple of things. The LDP has been largely in power in Japan since its formation at the end of World War II. It only lost power once, as you mentioned, about a decade ago, and some of these polls by these newspapers are the lowest for any leader of Japan since the party was formed. I mean, one more to add to the list is the latest poll, 17.1% approval rating and 58% disapproval. Now, the Prime Minister has grappled with low approval rating since he took over from Prime Minister Suga 2 years ago. He reshuffled cabinet then to kind of, clean the party from the stink that was still around from the chaotic Olympics and the COVID-19 pandemic. He reshuffled again about a year ago in 2022 because there were ongoing links between cabinet to the now in Japan disgraced Unification Church, and he kicked all the members that seemed to be connected out of his cabinet, but that didn't help. 30% approval rating on average throughout the year. Only 2 months ago, he cleaned shop yet again. The cost of living, stagnant wages, general hardship in the economy here contributing to low approval rating, and just 2 months later, 4 very prominent, powerful members of his executive have to leave their positions from that Abe faction because of this fundraising scandal. And, media reports here are questioning if this isn't the early signs of the end of Kishida's leadership.
Chris, I just want to get your thoughts on this. As you mentioned that, it could spell the end of Kishida's leadership. What happens next from here? Where does Japan go from here? Is there a next leader in line? What's next?
Well, it's a great question. I mean, the LDP, first of all, is no stranger to fundraising scandals. There are scandals and kickbacks all the way through the political dynasties and the families of the LDP stretching back to the 1950s. And so, the smell of that is still all over the party and the public's point of view. The public is very disillusioned with the government at the best of times. But looking at specifics, he has to go into the holiday period with this. This is going to linger around all the New Year's period going into the next year. It is going to affect policies such as boosting the funding for the self-defense forces. But looking ahead even further, the next election isn't until about the end of 2025. But before then, about 9 or 10 months from now, Kishida's leadership of the party is up for renewal. And so experts here, political scientists, are saying that he really wants to hold a snap election before then so the public can refresh his mandate before the party gets a shot at it. But with polling this bad, they say, the LDP will only bleed votes, Kishida will only weaken his position. They were thinking maybe after the budget is passed a few months from now, he might call a snap election. But it's a real headache now. His polling's never been this bad. It's never been this close to home from him. It's been knock after knock. The next leader is likely going to become from a different faction from the LDP.
All right, Chris, thank you so much for joining in. Always a pleasure to speak with you, and we'll be back for more updates as this unfolds further.
Moving on now, the India-Canada relationship, it's reached a flashpoint over the killing of Khalistani terrorist Hardeep Singh Nijjar in Surrey.
This is, of course, in British Columbia. Now, External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar has said that India is a responsible and prudent country, always open to examine inputs given by any other nation. He said, and I quote here, if any country, not just Canada, has a concern and gives us some input or some basis for that concern, we are always open to look at it.
Now, the ties between India and Canada came under severe strain following Justin Trudeau's allegations of a potential involvement in Indian agents in the killing of Nijjar on the 18th of June. New Delhi rejected Ottawa's allegations as absurd and motivated. India had designated Nijjar as a terrorist in 2020.
S. Jaishankar said that the issues brought up by Canadians and Americans are not necessarily the same. The US recently charged an Indian man of attempting to kill Khalistani terrorists on American soil. Gurpatwant Singh Pannu is one of the founders of a US-based separatist group, which is called Sikhs for Justice, SFJ. India dissociated with the incident and expressed concern over being associated with the alleged plot.
New Delhi has established an inquiry committee to investigate the claims, and the US State Department says Washington will wait to see the results of the probe. Jaishankar said, and I'm quoting here, when Americans brought up the issue, they told us some specific things.
Now, in January, Iraq is poised for a significant economic shift with foreign currency reserves exceeding $100 billion. The government takes a bold step to curtail the influence of the black market.
The central bank mandates that every commercial transaction must now be conducted aiming to reduce the dominance of the US dollar in the national economy. And how is the common man reacting to this development? Take a look.
مؤخرا بالأشهر اللي فاتت كانوا البنوك المحلية وأغلبها الأهلية يسلمون عملة الدولار على شكل دفعات بسبب عدم توفر السيولة مالت الدولار. فالكميات اللي ينطوها هي كميات قليلة مقارنة بالرواتب اللي موجودة.
كوني موظف بالقطاع الخاص حاليا جاي نواجه مشكلة باستخسار رواتبنا بالدولار من المصارف اللي جاي تحول رواتبنا إلها. المصارف جاي تحاول تعطينا رواتبنا بالدينار العراقي وفق سعر الصرف الرسمي اللي هو حاليا يفرق بما قيمته 20% عن سعر الصرف بالسوق السوداء.
Stricter regulations are underway as Iraq confronts challenges like the smuggling of dollars to nations facing US sanctions. The government, keen on consolidating its monetary sovereignty, restricts new money wired from abroad to dinars. Now, to tackle illicit trade, Iraq adopts the SWIFT system and encourages importers to use official channels. The gap between official and unofficial dollar rates remains a concern, though, prompting authorities to take action against those exploiting the system. Mudhir Saleh, financial policy advisor to the Prime Minister, spoke to AFP, highlighting the need to consolidate Iraq's monetary sovereignty.
نعزز ما يسمى بالسيادة النقدية. لا يمكن التعامل بعملتين داخل الاقتصاد الوطني. التسعير هو بالدينار العراقي. العملة الوطنية العراقية هي العملة القائدة وعملة اللي هي مخزن القيمة وهي عملة التقدير والتقييم.
As Iraq navigates this economic transition, it grapples with a dual currency issue. The government allows importers in key sectors such as food, medicine and construction to obtain dollars at the official rate to stave off inflation. Concurrently, there is a push to favor alternative currencies like the euro, Emirati dirham and Chinese yuan. These measures seek to reduce the demand for dollars and reshape the economic landscape of the nation. News now from the world of technology. Looks like there's no end in sight when it comes to the US-China chip war.
Well, as per media reports, more Chinese agencies and state-backed companies across the country have asked their staff to not bring Apple iPhones and other foreign devices to work.
Now, you may recall that in September, according to reports, at least 3 ministries and government bodies banned their staff from using iPhones and other foreign-branded devices at work. For over a decade, China has been seeking to reduce reliance on foreign technologies.
The Chinese government's move is being seen as a way to encourage the use of more indigenous brands in the country and to reduce reliance on overseas technologies. Smaller firms and agencies in lower tier cities such as Zhejiang, Shandong, Liaoning and Central Hebei, which houses the world's largest iPhone factory, also issued verbal directives to their employees. China is the second biggest market for Apple after the US. All right, what comes to your mind when we say F1 racing? Well, it's super fast cars, and of course there's a lot of zooming sounds that come along with them, and even super fast car drivers.
Now, what if we tell you you'll soon witness F1 car racing without those drivers? Abu Dhabi is all set to host the first edition of Autonomous Racing League, commonly known as A2RL, next year in April.
Now, fans of car racing will be able to witness self-driving cars compete against each other on the Formula 1 track instead of the regular Formula 1 teams. The Autonomous Racing League will have 10 teams from university and research institutions take part in the race. The winning team will walk away with a cash prize of $2.25 million. Each car will come equipped with radar and laser scanners as well as cameras and GPS to run the course. Not just that, spectators can also get in the driver's seat and see firsthand head-to-head autonomous car racing thanks to augmented reality technologies.